This board is a total vibe. It has me riding around feeling like only I can prevent forest fires.
Only who can prevent forest fires? You
Get it, Ranger, forest fires. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Nevertheless, I love this board. I have a lot to discuss, but I also want to share what I'm really afraid of when you talk about this board. The Backfire Ranger has a very well thought out deck system. And when you stand on the board, what you'll notice is that it almost has a perfect amount of flex. It's not too much where the board is going to bottom out when riding, but it has enough flex to eat up cracks and vibrations and allow you to pump and carve when riding the board. What you'll also notice is that it almost has very strategically placed drop down areas on the board. Now that drop down area is not super aggressive, but I think it's appropriate to be able to lock your feet in place and actually carve and pump around. Very solid construction there. Now the deck dimensions are pretty solid as well. What you'll notice is that the deck at the widest parts where you actually place your feet is about 10 inches. And then the most narrow part of the deck, which is actually in the center, is around 9 inches. And the total length of the deck is around 41 inches. But I think the most important area, which is the area between the drop down areas, is actually about 28 inches. And that's great because you have a lot of room to move your feet around when riding to help reduce foot fatigue when riding the board. Overall, I think that the deck is very solid. The Backfire Ranger utilizes flanker double kingpin trucks. And to be honest about it, this is my very first board with double kingpin setup. And I thought that it was going to be a very wobbly, unstable ride. But what I'm here to tell you is actually the board is very stable at high speeds. I hit the top speed several times on this board and I did not feel incredibly unstable. I also found that these trucks were excellent for carving and pumping, but then also if you needed to make sharp turns or if you were trying to make the transition between different types of terrain. Let's say if I was riding on a trail and I rode up on the grass, I felt like the double kingpin trucks helped the board be very stable when trying to transition between different types of riding conditions. So overall, I think that the setup for the trucks is pretty solid. I think that the bushing setup is going to be a solid situation for a lot of different riders out there. To be honest about it, I may put a little bit stiffer bushing in there just so I have a tad bit more stability, but I think that for most riders, these bushes are going to be more than adequate. Pretty solid to me. Battery and range. The Ranger utilizes a 12S3P battery configuration utilizing 21700 cells and a 518 watt-hour battery. Now, I feel like that is a pretty solid setup for this type of board. A lot of people really enjoy the 21700 cells because they have a little bit more punch than the traditional 18650 cells that you see in a lot of other boards. Now, when looking at the enclosure, you also are going to notice that it's designed in a manner to actually accommodate the flex that the deck actually has. And I found that it was very well designed because when standing on the board, you don't feel like you're going to damage or break anything. I also like the overall construction of it because the enclosure doesn't hang too far. For individuals who actually want to take this board off road, you're not going to have to worry too much about scratching the enclosure. Now, one of my favorite things about the actual battery enclosure design is the built-in lights on the rear of the board. And what you'll notice is that utilizing the remote and double pressing the power button, you can turn on the white lights in the back of the board. And I think that this is very helpful when riding in low light conditions to make sure that you're a little bit more visible when riding the board. The other thing you're going to notice about the rear lights is that when you actually activate turbo on the board, the lights actually turn red. And I like that because when you're riding at night, that allows you to be a little bit more visible. And I think that that is a pretty solid addition to the board. Now, when you talk about range, there are a variety of different factors that actually impact the range that you're going to get on a board. Rider weight, how aggressive you ride. Are you riding a lot of hills? Do you take the board off road? Are you riding on areas that are just flat surfaces? Are you aggressive with the board? And I was able to get anywhere from 12 to 15 miles on the board, depending on how I was riding the board at that particular time. And I think that that's pretty solid for someone that's about my weight, who's around 220 pounds. Now, what I noticed is that my wife, who rides this particular board, she was actually able to get a little bit more range on the board because she doesn't accelerate as aggressively as I do when riding the board. She doesn't carve as hard and things like that. But I think that a lot of people who are actually going to purchase this board and ride it will find that the range that they're able to get is actually pretty adequate. No major concerns to me there. The Ranger X3 is utilizing 165 millimeter or 6.5 inch honeycomb airless tires. And to me, these wheels, along with the flex of this deck, creates a very, very comfortable riding experience on the board. One of the other things I noticed while riding this board,
we interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New True to Life merch. Budget board, premium board, boutique board. Nah, Escape. It's all about the community. Get your merch using the link below. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
is that I was almost able to have an experience that's a little different than what I've had with my traditional wheels, because these wheels are able to eat up a lot of cracks, a lot of vibrations, and they allow you to tackle a variety of different terrain and situations. So when riding this board, you can ride on the sidewalks, you can ride in the streets. If you need to jump over and maybe ride in the grass or a dirt road real quick, you're able to do those things as well. Now, the other thing I like about these tires is that I don't often ride in wet situations or in the rain, because I like to keep my boards clean and I don't want to damage anything. But I think that the rubber material that these wheels are made out of, if you were forced to or had to ride in kind of slick conditions, I think that these wheels will actually handle that relatively well, because they're almost like a rubberized material. It's almost like tires on a car. So I think that that's definitely something worth mentioning as well. And when you talk about the wheels, you can actually change them out when the back wheels wear out. I'm finding that the rear wheels are actually wearing out a little bit quicker than the front wheels, and it's probably just because the back wheels are what actually move the board. So to me, overall, I think that these wheels are very solid. The Ranger is actually utilizing a hub motor drivetrain system. And this is interesting because I haven't ridden a hub motor system in quite a while. The vast majority of my most recent boards that I received have been belt drive. And with all type of drive systems, they have their benefits, pluses and minuses. And what I'm here to tell you is that even though this is a hub system, it is incredibly comfortable. But then the other thing I like about this particular setup is that you're able to almost have like a carefree riding experience. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times if you're riding belt drive systems, you have to check the belts. You have to make sure that there are not rocks and pebbles getting into the belts. And let's just say you have an all-terrain board that you ride off-road, the likelihood that rocks and pebbles are going to get into your system are pretty high. Now, in my household, basically all of us ride belt drive boards, my wife, my son, and myself. So that means that on a weekly basis, I'm checking belts for rocks and things like that on 3 different boards every week. So it was a welcomed experience to have a hub motor system where I don't have to worry about that. So in addition to just not have to worry about that, if you happen to get stuck out in the rain or mud or things like that, because hub motor systems are a little bit more sealed, you may not have to worry about all of that, the issues that may come with riding in those type of conditions. So overall, I feel like the motors are pretty solid, and I have no major complaints there as well. Now, this is one of my favorite elements about most or all of my Backfire boards, is this particular remote. And when you look at the remote, it has a screen on there that gives you a plethora of information. It's going to give you information about the battery indicator for the board, the battery indicator for the remote. The scroll wheel is very intuitive and smooth. So when riding the board, you don't have to worry about being jerked or going back and forth with the board, because everything is very intuitive, has just enough tension, and it's very predictable. And that is very important to me. Now, the other thing that you'll notice on this particular board is that it has that little circle area where you can actually put your finger in there when riding. And I love that, because that allows you to ride and not always have to utilize the lanyard when riding the board. And I just feel like it makes it have a very comfortable grip. What you'll also notice is that it has like a little groove area there as well. So let's say you're riding a board with gloves and you can't get your finger in there, you can actually rest your finger on top there. I really enjoy this remote a lot. The turbo feature. This is another area that I really enjoy about the Backfire's newest model of boards. They have unlimited turbo. And what happens is when you activate the turbo button, it gives you a boost of acceleration. And that is helpful for when you're trying to pass cars in the street or if you're trying to pass bicyclists and things like that. Now, there's another area that I really like about it, and it also has a little controversy associated with it. A lot of people wonder, Backfire, if we're going to utilize unlimited turbo, why not just create a third speed mode? And I'm going to explain why I like it this way, and I talked about it in my G3 and my Zeller review, but I'll give you a quick synopsis here. A lot of other boards utilize a turbo feature, but it's going to be the 4-speed mode. And many people ride, let's just say, in mode 3. But what happens is if they want to bump it up to turbo, they bump it up to turbo to pass a car or to, go around a bicyclist. And let's say they want to go back down to mode 3. They have to cycle through all of the speed modes. Go to mode 1, go to mode 2 to get to mode 3. And what I love about the Backfire, the way they set up their turbo, is that if I'm in sport mode, which is the mode most people ride around in, if I bump it up to turbo, I hit turbo, I pass that car, I climb that hill, I can simply just hit the speed button and it drops me right back down into sport mode. I don't have to cycle through all of the speed modes. And I found that is particularly helpful for individuals who are actually commuting in areas where they need to pass a car and they don't have time to sit up here and scroll through all of the different speed modes. So I feel like it is a very solid setup the way they utilize the turbo. One of the other things you'll notice when utilizing the turbo is that when you activate turbo, the red lights actually come on the board. And a pretty cool thing about that is that you can actually, if you want the lights off, you can turn the lights off even if you're in the turbo feature. So that's actually something that's very solid as well when you talk about the Backfire boards. The intangibles. In addition to all of the cool features that the Backfire board actually offers, Backfire has a reputation for having excellent customer service. So if you have issues, they're very responsive in trying to help you remedy those issues. Their boards also come with a 180-day warranty, which is very solid. And they also have local shipping. So they have shipping in the United States, shipping in Europe, and then shipping in China. And that's very helpful when you want to get your board. You can get it in a timely fashion. That's also helpful for situation if you need to order parts. You can get those things in a timely fashion as well. One of the other things, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is that I like the built-in lights on the board because I'm all about visibility when riding these electric rideables because it just kind of helps with safety as well. So very solid there as well. My nitpicks. Most of you guys know that one of my favorite areas is just kind of sharing some of my thoughts on things that I think can be improved about boards. And to be honest about it, I've kind of ranted and raved about this board, and I think it is a solid board. And I do have a couple of nitpicks, but I don't think that these nitpicks actually take away from the riding experience of the board because I think it is a solid board. And oftentimes when you have a solid board like this, some of your nitpicks are actually almost like wish list type things. So anyway, one of my nitpicks when you talk about this particular board is that I wish that I actually could control the red lights on the board. The only way that the red lights come on the board is that you actually have to be in turbo. I would love it if I wanted the lights to be red, I can just activate them. Because oftentimes if I'm riding at night and I do a lot of night riding, I want the red lights to show in the back. But I may not want to have to turn on turbo to actually get the red lights because turbo eats up the battery a little bit more. And that's one of the small things that I wish could be addressed is that being able to turn on the red lights whenever I wanted them on and not have to actually turn on turbo. One of the other areas that I think maybe could be addressed is maybe I wish the board had a tad bit more torque. Now, I think most people are going to find that the torque is adequate. I feel like it's adequate in most situations, but there's no such thing as too much torque. You know how that is. I wish that the board maybe had a little bit more torque. So overall, I think that it's pretty solid, and that's going to take me into my final thoughts and the area that I'm most afraid about with this particular board. Now, the Backfire Ranger I think is a very solid board, and I think it does a lot of things well. I love the double kingpin trucks. I think it carves well. The flex is pretty amazing. The aesthetics of the board look pretty good. Backfire has a great reputation for customer service. When you talk about the wheels and the tires, you can ride over a lot of obstacles. The board utilizes a nice turbo feature. It has built-in lights. Just a lot of cool features with the board, and I think that a lot of people are going to like this board. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, the thing that I probably like most about a board like this is the fact that when you're riding this board, you're able to just ride the board. You don't have to think about really map out your route. Okay, am I going to ride somewhere that my street board can't ride? Am I going to be riding somewhere where there's so many cars I can't ride in the street? You really don't have to think about a lot of those things because this board can handle almost any type of urban type of situation. If you need to jump on the sidewalk, you can jump on the sidewalk and don't have to worry about the sidewalk being too uneven. If you need to ride in the streets, you can do that. If you need to jump in the grass for a second to go around some people and then get back on the sidewalk or whatever, you can do that. So this board offers a lot of different features, and I think that it's going to meet a lot of people's needs out there. One of the other niche areas that I think that this board really could fill is that I think that this board could be an excellent commuter. And when I say that is, this is the type of board that allows you to really handle almost any type of situation. But then on top of that, it's a board that you don't have to think a lot about. You don't have to worry about, okay, how many miles did I put on my board? So I need to maybe change belts, or how many miles did I put on here and I need to adjust belt tension? Or how many miles did I put on here and I have to worry about, is the pulley still okay? This is really a board that can fit a niche audience of people that they don't want to worry about that. The only thing they want to worry about is my board charged? Is my remote charged? All right, I'm rolling out. So I think that that's another area in a niche market that the board meets, and I think it is a very solid area. Now, I kind of want to share the one area that I'm a little afraid about. My wife likes this board so much that she's talking about that she wants this to be her board.
The Backfire Ranger is mine.
No, it's not. It's Dad's board.
And I think that that's indicative of another niche market about this particular board, is that it may be a great board for new riders or people who are afraid about riding and coming off of their board because they may hit an obstacle in the road. So I think that that's definitely something else to consider, because I often get asked the question of, hey, what's a good board to buy for my spouse? I want her to ride with me because I'm leaving her home so much. And I think that a board like the Ranger X3 could definitely fit that market as well. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the Ranger X3, I have a link down in the description and it supports the channel. As always, I'll see you at the top because the bottom is too crowded. Peace.
You